a staunch believer in every single kid getting a really good education. I don't mean to say that school choice isn't a positive thing, because it can be. It's just not the way it's manifesting itself here in Arizona, where too many politicians who claim to be interested in education really mean private education.
You said there was a second thing you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, the whole reason I'm running, yes, my students and my own sons and my foster kids are the catalysts for all of this. But the bottom line reason of why I'm running is that we have a chance of flipping the Senate, and flipping the Senate will be an absolute game changer for Arizona. And that is indeed why I'm taking on what seems sometimes like an impossible task of teaching full-time and running, in a competitive race, is because I really, really want the compromise and negotiation that will come at the Capitol with flipping one of the chambers. And the House, that's such a long shot, but the Senate, we can actually do. That's 3 seats. We need to pick up 3 seats. That's it. And that will change the state.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't think I would run if the Senate was already in Democratic control. Like, I'm not running because I had some deep-seated desire to be a state senator. I didn't. I'm running because I really can envision what this state could look like if everybody at the Capitol actually had to negotiate and compromise with each other.
What is that experience like, running for office and also teaching full-time? Is it exhausting?
It is. Yes, it is so beyond exhausting. I get up in the 3 o'clock hour. There will be days, and not like just a few days. There will be days where I'm up at 2:30 grading essays before school even starts. What makes it possible, though, is that I've got just this amazing team who will pick up pieces or carry some of my burden, because they all know. I mean, I said from the very beginning, I can only do this if everybody knows and everybody's on the same page with the idea that my own current students absolutely cannot suffer. They cannot pay the price of me running. So, yes, it's terribly exhausting. There are long, long weeks, but I also have this amazing team of people who make it happen. They allow this to happen. I could not do this. It would be impossible to do this without the team I've got.
And if any of our listeners want to check out your campaign, volunteer, maybe, donate to your campaign, how can they do that?
They can go on my website, which is ChristinePorterMarsh.com, all one word, Christine with a CH, ChristinePorterMarsh.com, and then everything is on there. Volunteer link, contribution link. Yeah, everything's on there.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This was really exciting. I didn't know that Arizona State Senate was so close to flipping, and that's going to have to be one of the things we watch and keep an eye on this year.
Yeah, it is that close, and it cannot happen without the seat I'm running for.
Excellent.
This is the most mathematically viable seat to flip. So, yeah, pressure's on.
Yeah, I was going to say, no pressure, right?
Pressure's on, but we're getting it done. And so, yeah, it's exciting.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think what you two ladies are doing is pretty cool, pretty awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Nelson. And I'm Olivia Mickle. We're 2 academic sisters. And we host a podcast called What's Her Name? What's Her Name podcast tells you the stories of fascinating women that you've never heard of. We're unearthing the histories of really interesting women that have slipped through the cracks of our collective history. We add era-appropriate music. We interview really fascinating experts, everyone from professors to authors to the manager of a brothel museum. We cover it all. So give it a listen. whatshernamepodcast.com.
Hey everyone, this is Kelly, and I'm here in this segment with Carri Hicks, who is running for the state senate in Oklahoma District 40. Hi, Carri.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. So maybe you could start just by telling us a little bit about your background, who you are, and why you've decided to run for the state senate.
Sure. I'm a teacher and a mom and a lifelong Okie. And so we've just seen in Oklahoma the last 10 years some really action. And I've been teaching for 7. So kind of seeing and witnessing those cuts firsthand in the classroom has just been really disheartening as we think about kind of the long-term implications of where we're going, I guess, as a state, and how that kind of translates to not only our lack of being able to recruit and retain our current certified educators, but also, having some of those, those kids are graduating and are not getting a quality education. And so kind of witnessing this and watching this and looking at our political landscape, I just was really upset and really frustrated. And we were actually at the point where we were either going to need to move so that I could get a cost of living on our teacher salary, or to stay and fight. And so I decided to go ahead and run for office because I want to be a part of the solution and making sure that our kids are being taken care of. And I have a political science degree. That's my background, even though I've been teaching for 7 years. And so I just felt like it was time now to kind of stand up as that politically educated teacher and make sure that we have champions inside our state legislature that are actually taking care of kids and taking care of public education.
I wanted to ask a little bit about Oklahoma politics in general. Of course, I knew that Oklahoma was a red state, was fairly Republican state, but I was shocked to see just how overwhelmingly Republican the state legislature is. The state senate has like a super majority of Republicans. Although in 2017 special elections, a couple of seats flipped back to the Democrats. But the seat you're running for, even though this is in Oklahoma City, is still held by a Republican. So are the cities in Oklahoma any more Democratic, liberal than the rest of the state? What do you see going on there?
Yes, and in fact, I mean, we've been kind of looking at the data as far as the trends, I guess, politically over, the last several election cycles. And this Senate seat that I'm running for is actually the most Democratic Senate seat not held by a Democrat. So what that means is there are 5 House seats that are inside of this Senate seat, and 3 of those are actually held by Democrats. And one is an open seat, and we hope that it will also flip. So it's been trending blue in this part of Oklahoma City for several election cycles, and the voter registration numbers are kind of interesting in this area as well. And I think that's part that this particular part of the city is kind of being, I guess, the next generation is kind of moving in and flipping and rehabbing houses. And so the things that are most important, I think to young families like mine are making sure that we have good quality public education. And so it has, kind of even moved into, I would even say, a more moderate Republican as well.
Yeah, and so the primaries for this seat were very interesting. The incumbent actually lost his primary on the Republican side. And the Democratic primary looked very close, was very hard fought, but more Democratic primary votes were cast than Republican primary votes in this district. Yes. So that seems to be at least a good sign. Not everybody votes in the primaries, but with 2 contested races, that seems like something you can look toward.
Do you know anything about why the incumbent Republican was primaried out?
I think there are a lot of theories. Ultimately, I think it was maybe a combination of three issues. He, was very outspoken on a number of things, having a medical background, and was actually the only doctor in the Senate. And so he came out strong against medical marijuana in the state question that was on the ballot for our state's primary elections. And so in Senate District 40, the approval rate was actually at 69% in favor. And that was, higher than most places in the state. So I think he wasn't really in tune with that community, and maybe he didn't communicate his message well to that community as to why he was so opposed. So I think that was one part of it. I know he wasn't super receptive to teachers during the walkout for 9 days when we were at the Capitol. He held some town hall meetings that I think he was hoping to be more efficient with his time, but unfortunately that led to the perception, that he wasn't willing to take one-on-one meetings to discuss the issue. And that's, ultimately how I even ended up in this race was the previous year, during legislative session. He never responded to my emails, never called me back, and in my opinion was kind of unwilling to discuss education issues. And so I think, on a large scale, during the walkout, that's kind of how teachers felt, treated in that regard. And then another really interesting issue, as a medical doctor, he was really pushing for some strong vaccine laws. So there was a big community push back against that in removing some choices for parents. And so I think those three factors kind of all together maybe, created the perfect storm, so to speak, it was just such a large margin. I don't think anybody anticipated that he was going to be defeated by that much.
So it looks like you've been doing a lot of door knocking, going around talking to the people of the district. In addition to education, can you tell me the kinds of things that you're hearing from people about what their concerns are?
Sure. Healthcare continues to be a very personal and very important conversation. Having access to, basic services and prevention, I think, is just so important in our community. And, the affordability of that right now is just, it's not there. And people are very frustrated by that. It feels like our premiums continue to increase annually, and, our services for whatever reason are being, in decline, so to speak. And so making sure that we have access to affordable health care is very important. And my son actually has type 1 diabetes, so managing his chronic illness, it's very expensive. And so I think, that resonates on the doors because, it's not a unique situation. We just happen to be that family that's also, struggling with that issue. And outside of that, I think there's a large majority that are very concerned with criminal justice reforms. We've the highest incarceration rate of women in the world now, and second of men in the country. And so it stands to reason that we've really got to get serious about some criminal justice reforms to look at, why we're incarcerating individuals, or, if there's a way to move towards rehabilitating and, investing in mental health courts and drug courts that would absolutely bring that number of incarceration rates down. Overall, it would save a ton of money for our state. But I see the impact of that in the classroom when kids are separated from their parents who are serving sentences. So, there's just some really long-term implications for criminal justice reforms that people are eager to talk about.
We had earlier in the year been thinking about doing a couple of episodes about teachers and the walkouts that were happening around the country, and we found a reluctance among some teachers to talk about politics, that they'd been hearing that they shouldn't be political as teachers. And I was wondering, there seems to be a growing number of teachers around the country who are running for office, and if you could talk at all to that tension of, often teachers not being political and yet politics touching so closely on education and really what happens in the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really narrow path to walk, to be super honest. You know, our career is directly impacted by our state government. And so I